Welcome to Search Talk Live with search engine optimization and marketing experts Robert O'Haver and Matt Weber. Powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Search Talk Live. I'm your host, Robert O'Haver, with my co-host, Matt Weber of Crore Internet Marketing. Matt, how's it going?
Hey, Robert. Good to see you, man. You're back off the road for a little bit. You're home for a while.
Yes. Yeah. No more road trips.
And I am, too. I'm off the road for a while. Nice to sleep in my own bed for a while.
Yeah, you're doing the Google thing, huh?
Yeah, I got a few locations. Did Vegas recently, did Nashville, Tennessee recently, did Wichita, Kansas recently, did Pensacola recently. So I'm looking forward to being home for a little bit.
Nice. Why don't you tell our listeners what you do for Google?
Well, I'm the president of Crore Internet Marketing, and as a side gig to that, I'm part of the Grow with Google team. And Grow with Google is an effort by Google to train a really impressive number of businesses and individuals in digital skills. So they host events all over the country that you can find at growwithgoogle.com, and I'm one of the handpicked trainers for those events.
Very cool. Cool. Now, before we get started, guys, one thing I wanted to bring up, and I keep getting a lot of feedback from listeners. When you're listening to people to get advice from a podcast, or whether it be a video or something like that for SEO or search engine optimization or any of that stuff, you want to make sure that it's applicable to your situation, your subject. So we've had some cases where someone had mentioned to me, what was it? Neil Patel said that content isn't king, and I have to disagree there. But you have to look at the source too, because someone like Neil Patel is an excellent marketer, but he's got probably 1 million people on his mailing list, so he could put out anything,
right,
and send that to that mailing list, and even if 10% of those people, that's 100,000 people hitting your site. Of course that's going to rank because it's getting activity.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about search, and one of the things you and I are passionate about is people tend to oversimplify search in order to sell it. And one of the things we try to do in the show is to make search digestible. And so you take the bits and pieces that are relevant to you, but we're going to try to break it down into its smallest pieces on every show. Maybe there's a show that doesn't fit your application 100%, but come back for the next one because we're going to try another topic and we're going to break something down into smaller pieces again.
Yeah, and no means I'm not picking on Neil Patel. He's an excellent marketer, but you have to look at the scale of things. Your business, you don't have 1 million followers or 1 million people on your email list. So
big brand exposure, big brand recognition.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different situation for most of you that listen to his podcast or stuff. So just make sure that you filter that stuff. But anyway,
do we want to say something really negative about Neil just so somebody can retweet it and we can get some publicity about it?
No. So, guys, today is really exciting. I'm really excited about this show because this is a tool that I've probably used since its fruition, probably shortly after anyway. But I'm sure all of you have heard of Screaming Frog. It is an excellent tool for SEOs, and there's a free version. I recommend the paid version, but I would highly recommend you downloading it and looking for Screaming Frog. But today with us is Dan Sharp. He is the co-founder of Screaming Frog, and he also has an agency. Dan, how's it going?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, you're over in the UK on the other side of the pond.
I am indeed, yes. I'm in a town called Henley-on-Thames, which you probably haven't heard of before, but it's in Oxfordshire, about an hour outside London.
Nice.
Is my accent as good as his?
No. So, Dan, why don't you tell us about yourself, a little bit about your agency and Screaming Frog?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Dan. I'm one of the founders of Screaming Frog. I've been doing SEO for about 15 years. Most people know Screaming Frog because of the tool that we produce, which is actually called the SEO Spider. It's a tool that crawls your website and helps you audit it from an SEO perspective. But Screaming Frog, we're actually a search marketing agency as well. So we do SEO, PPC, content marketing for clients. I think there's about 40 of us now. We're based in Henley-on-Thames as well, in the UK. But we have clients, global clients, clients worldwide. That's about it.
For the few people who haven't started their love affair with Screaming Frog, what's the number one reason why an average website owner would want to use Screaming Frog as a tool?
Yeah, so I mean, it helped. I think the thing that it does is it helps you make better decisions from an SEO perspective. So it will crawl your website for you and help you collect lots of data around the website and specific kind of SEO elements. So pick up things like errors and issues that you might not be able to spot without it. Or at least if you've got a large website, we work with clients who have, hundreds of thousands or millions of pages. It's impossible to check every page, manually. It's just not possible. So we built this tool essentially for ourselves, to help us provide better recommendations and auditing for our clients. So if you want to improve your website, if you want to be more visible in the search results, then our tool can certainly help you do that. The only thing I would say is that it's really built for SEO professionals rather than, your average person who doesn't necessarily know anything about SEO. It doesn't tell you how to do SEO. It gives you hints along the way and presents you with data to make better decisions.
Now, Robert, you're a power user. Would you agree, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's compare answers here. Robert, first to you and then to Dan. What do you think is the hidden benefit of Screaming Frog that most people don't use?
For people that are technical,
yeah,
I think that it's like candy in a candy store. I mean, based on your data, it's what you get back before you make a decision that makes it very valuable. And
is there anything in particular that it does that you think most people don't really?
There's not one thing.
Not one thing?
No.
Right. How about you, Dan? Is there one hidden feature that Screaming Frog has that you think kind of goes unheralded?
Maybe. I mean, I think there's lots of different kind of configurations and features that people don't know about. People kind of know what they know, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but they learn how to use it and then that's it, and don't realize there's loads of other things. One of the new features that we brought out was structured data auditing, and obviously Google has their Google structured data testing tool, but we were like pretty much the first crawler. In fact, I think we are the first crawler. There's nobody else who does it. That will find any structured data on your website, the different types of structured data, and will show you that and audit it and tell you if you've got any problems, whether that's with against schema.org specs or Google features. So that's pretty cool. That only came out earlier this year, so I think quite a few people don't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one.
Well, he just stole my third question, so I'm off to a not a good start here. But Dan, talking about structured data, we've done entire shows on structured data and its value on that. What are some of the things that a failed structured data might show up as in Screaming Frog? What would I see that would help me indicate that something is wrong with my structured data?
I mean, it's fairly similar to the structured data testing tool in that you can configure it to crawl the different types of structured data that you have, whether it's JSON LD or RDFA or microdata, and you'll see the different types of structured data getting pulled in against web pages. And then we literally display if there's any errors. So we've got columns for errors or warnings, and they match up with the same errors and warnings that most people or most SEOs will be familiar with within the Google structured data testing tool.
Like it's a dating tool?
Yeah. That's a different thing. Yeah.
Upsell.
Yeah. So that could be all kinds of things. That could be that you're missing particular parts of structured data, or there might be particular errors. Perhaps you've got the wrong date format, or you're not using the correct encoding or whatever it might be.
It's a really interesting story to hear that you built this tool to help your agency. Tell us about the turning point where you said to yourself, man, we've got something here. This could be bigger than us. When did that happen?
Oh, you took my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So this was developed to go back by my brother and I about a decade ago, and it was actually while my brother actually had a full-time job somewhere else. And so this was really in the background that we were building this tool, and it was for the agency. It was for me to use specifically when I was freelancing under the name of Screaming Frog, to help audit client websites and provide better recommendations. And we got to a point where we thought, this is pretty good. We weren't really sure whether we were going to release it, publicly, to be honest. It was due to just be an internal tool. And then we thought, let's put it out there. Let's see what happens. Let's provide a free version that people can use. And so, we picked an arbitrary 500 URLs figure, which we still have today. And thought we'd put it out there and get some feedback. And, it's kind of immediately, we got some really positive feedback. People seemed to really like it, and immediately people started signing up to buy licenses, which we were amazed by. I remember, the first couple of days where we sold, a few licenses, and my brother and I were fairly amazed because, this was built, by us. It's grown, substantially since then. We've obviously got many thousands of users, and the great thing is we've actually got a really great community as well. A lot of the features that you see today, have come from direct, customer feedback.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the features and changes that we've made over the years have come from customers and users who give us great feedback all the time.
And they can actually download at screamingfrog.co.uk?
Exactly that. Yeah, you can go to the .com. We did buy the .com as well. It redirects to the .co.uk. The .com used to be some kind of like film production agency in LA, actually. But you can go to screamingfrog.co.uk. It's called the SEO Spider. If you go to the SEO Spider page, you can just download it. We don't want your details or anything like that. You don't need to give us your email address. You can literally just click a button and download it. And
that's fascinating. In today's world, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I would imagine you would have a massive mailing list right now.
We're really different to a lot of companies. I mentioned pre the show, we're not salesmen at all.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things very differently to other people. And we've never required anyone to give us their email address or anything like that, and we allow people to use it for crawling up to 500 URLs at a time. You can crawl as many websites as many different times as you like, for free. We don't collect any data on that and hassle you or anything along those lines.
Wow.
We don't actually employ any salesmen. We never have. We've never done any kind of traditional marketing or advertising or anything along those lines. It's only more recently actually that we've when we attend SEO conferences and things like that we've actually had a stand or something along those lines. It was actually only last year for the first time. And when we've had that stand, it's not really to sell. We're doing a crawling clinic, for example, at Brighton SEO in September, and that's more so users can come to us and ask us support queries, anything they want to know, how to use the tool or something along those lines.
Wow, you could have been the next Neil Patel.
It is remarkable though that you've maintained this position, and I think it's wonderful. When I first became exposed to the tool, I was just charmed by its simplicity. It was a very simple tool to use, and it had so much value for what it was. You didn't have to fight to get the results or learn a bunch of things. You could just download the data and get to work. I mean, the time from getting the data and getting to work was minimal, and you've maintained that over the years.
Yeah, user-friendly, very user-friendly.
Yeah. So that's the past, Dan. Tell us a little bit about the future. Do you see a day where Screaming Frog helps catalog the links that it reports? Like, here's a link that we're certain doesn't have any value. Here's a link that possibly could have some value. Here's a link that we're pretty sure does have some value. You can't be Google, obviously, but what's the future of Screaming Frog?
I mean, maybe just to answer that question. I mean, we have a kind of an internal page rank calculation that we do, which we just call link score. because we can't use the words PageRank. And the aim of that is to give you an idea of how important, obviously, relatively, a URL is on your website. That doesn't take into account external URLs. That's just internal URLs. But that can be pretty useful to work out, does this page need to be linked to, more internally or whatever it might be. But to kind of answer your question about Screaming Frog in the future, we've got a really excellent team on the agency side. We work with some really cool clients. We're doing really great work. I do think kind of having the agency side and getting exposed to so many client issues and still working in really competitive verticals, doing SEO consulting, really helps us and kind of gives us the edge on building a better tool, because we understand what SEOs need. Obviously, we get great feedback from users all the time, but we understand what SEOs need because we're SEOs.
Yeah, I think that is it. You're practitioners. You're like us. You're actually doing the work day to day.
Right.
Yeah, exactly that. I would say, we're in the trenches as well. We're doing the same things. We're getting asked the same things by clients and having to do the same kind of manual tasks that you want to automate and make more efficient and quicker and get data easier and make better decisions and all of those things. And that's what we're going to continue doing with the tool. We're going to continue improving it. I think we've got something like, the last time I had a look, something like 300 enhancements, we call them, so features and improvements for the tool in the development list, which I prioritize based upon feedback with a little bit of kind of internal steer as well. So yeah, really exciting. We're working on version 12 at the moment. Now we're on obviously 11.3. So we work on kind of 0.0 releases. So 11 is a big release with features, and then 11.1, 2, 3 are mainly kind of like bug fixes and things like that. So 12 will be the next big one, and we're just working on some nice big features for that. So we're not too far away now.
So if there's any users that have some ideas for features, I know Robert's probably got a dozen or so, they can tweet us and use the hashtag SearchTalkLive, and if we get them during the show, we'll introduce them to you. So if you've got an idea for a feature for Screaming Frog, tweet us. Use the hashtag SearchTalkLive.
Yeah, and you can download it for free for mentioning SearchTalkLive. Just kidding. But Dan, tell me, how has having such a popular tool kind of opened the doors for your agency?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has helped, and I think it's also hindered a little bit as well, because I think it's helped. With some clients, have certainly heard about us because of the tool, so they've got in-house SEO managers or whatever, or they've used the tool themselves and they've found out that we provide services too. That's not the reason why we built it, but it has worked that way for some clients. But kind of conversely, I do feel that some people just think that we do software. They don't know that we're an agency. And they just go, Screaming Frog, yeah, I use Screaming Frog, and then don't realize that Screaming Frog is the agency and the tool they're talking about is the SEO Spider, right. Which is cool. We call it Screaming Frog internally as well sometimes, so hey-ho. So, it's helped, and I do think it has hindered a little bit. Yeah.
Screaming Frog now lets you see no-follow links that are pointing to your site. What's the value of seeing a no-follow link pointing to your site?
So the SEO Spider will only tell you about internal links, whether they're followed or no follow. But if you mean from external websites, I think probably. Obviously, they're still valuable from a kind of user perspective. You're still going to get referral traffic and things like that. I do think from a link perspective, they are virtually zero. I don't think they necessarily get considered a huge amount in scoring. I don't think they pass any PageRank.
I'm going to have to find the source, but somebody wrote an article within the past 7 days that disputed the theory that Google's no-follow is actually, they treat it as literally a no-follow. That depending on the website that the link originates from, it may indeed pass some value even as a no-follow.
I think that's fair. So in the UK, for example, I think in the UK, for example, there's some big publishers. So some of the biggest newspapers that you can think of from the UK, I won't name them, but the really bad ones. And I think essentially their policy is they no follow all external links. So if you think about it from a Google perspective, that's a big black hole. I do wonder whether there might be some kind of internal measures. I don't know whether you could scale that manually or not or whatever, but I do wonder whether that if all links on a website are a blanket no-follow, whether there's some way that they can consider that algorithmically. I certainly think that Google are considering brand mentions now and things like that. It's very hard to prove, and I certainly don't think they carry the same weight as a link. But I do think they are looking at brand mentions, and I don't just mean typing into the search engines. I mean brand mentions within content and associated keywords around that.
Yeah, I think that's what this author was posting a theory as to, that these no-follow links may not pass the broad spectrum of signals that a non-no-follow link would, but that Google looks at them for certain very specific elements of context. And one of the things that he theorized was date, was timeliness. That Google helps determine the freshness of content by the date that it's published on another piece of content, even if the link to it is no follow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that could be a very good way. Obviously, there's lots of problems with Google understanding, the original article, the correct article to rank, that should be the canonical. We've all seen examples where, a piece of content's just been republished and is outranking the original, et cetera, et cetera. That would be, it would certainly be something that Google could consider, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The phrase you hear a lot now, I think, particularly in the past 6 months from the Google literature, is high-quality sites, right? That combination of words. What in your mind what can website owners do to communicate to Google that they are, in quotes, a high-quality site, end of quote?
I think the main thing is just answering, giving the best answer to the query. So, making sure that your landing pages, your web pages answer the query that people are searching for, and providing, good quality content that does that goes beyond the average, is better than the competition, ideally. A lot of people, look at the Google search quality guidelines, and there's lots of conversations around EAT, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, you can read those guidelines and kind of get an idea of the direction that Google want to go in to get an understanding. They want to rank people who are experts in a subject, who are an authority, obviously. But ultimately, you just need to be the best answer to the query, really.
Yeah, and it's getting to understand what that query is, knowing your target.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we do as an agency at the moment is understanding the intent of a query as well. So to give you an example, if you search for something like search engine optimization or SEO, a few years ago, probably 3 years ago, I'd say, it'd be a lot of service pages ranking on the first page of Google. You'd have an agency's SEO services page. If you have a look now, you won't see that. It's because Google have a better understanding about what people really want from, a search engine optimization or SEO search. And really what they want is they're finding out about what it means. So they really want a guide, whether that's a beginner's guide or something along those lines. Yeah. So we've been doing, lots of kind of searcher intent mapping for clients, getting to understand the intent behind the search and making sure they have the right type of content, to match it.
Yeah, I mean, I think not to toot my own horn, but I think that it's everybody, all the SEOs. It takes a very special talent to understand that, because depending on what service or business or product you offer, it varies. Like, some people are just searching for information. If you're an e-commerce site and you're doing a lot of Q&A, depending on what you're doing QA about, I've just seen so many times where a site, a person will do a search, they'll go to a site, get their answer, and leave. So you can't just go with, you have to have certain questions, search, certain intent, whether, if, what size is Mount Everest versus where can I, that's not a
how can I book a trip to Mount Everest?
Right, exactly.
Progressive content, right? It kind of walking up the user up a ladder of content that takes them to where they want to go.
Thank you, Matt. I couldn't get it out.
Yeah, that's my new theory, by the way, progressive content. Look for a blog post on that soon. Well, tell us about voice search, Dan, and how does voice search in the future or now affect what Screaming Frog might show us as SEOs, and how is voice search affecting your development of that product and your agency?
It's a good question. I would say at the moment, voice search, we're not really doing a huge amount in terms of features around voice search for the SEO Spider at the moment. To be completely honest, just because I don't think it makes sense at this time. Obviously, structured data you can get, and there's certain things you can do there, so you can look at it in that way. But I do think the way voice search is changing the way people search, I guess, and the way people use devices is interesting. There's still a lot of complications around it. Are people really searching for, a lot of our clients that we work with, obviously commercial? Do people really use a voice search around commercial queries at the moment?
Yeah, it's more local query stuff.
Local.
Yeah, I think local and obviously, understanding the weather and things like that are certainly areas. We, as an agency, don't work with many local clients.
Well, I want to sneak in one question before the break, if I can, Robert. Is there another version of Screaming Frog that only your agency gets to use that's a little beefier, a little more powerful? Are you allowed to tell us that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is, yeah.
It's called Screaming Toad.
There is. There's a more powerful version that's behind the black curtain, huh?
I mean, when you say more powerful, I mean, we've just got features earlier than obviously the standard user does. Yeah, so we have alphas and betas internally. So I have an alpha in front of me at the moment with lots of kind of new features and stuff. But yeah, you guys get to see it maybe 3 to 6 months after we do, something along those lines. Wow. Kind of depends.
Can you give us a sneak preview of one of the features on your alpha that we can't see?
Did I give one? I gave it away the other day on Twitter, so I can. Yeah, so I don't want to give away. I can't give away any of the bigger features. I always try and remain quiet, just because
we will not tell anybody.
Yeah, I know there's lots of other people building features at the same time. We always like to be first on things, you know how it is. But there's going to be, you're going to be able to configure things far more than you can at the moment. I know there's lots of configurations options at the moment, but even down to the way it's displayed. So at the moment you have obviously the tabs at the top. You'll be able to move those around and close them in a similar way to that you might in a browser.
Okay.
Kind of added flexibility there.
Feature request. Can it order a beer or lunch? Just kidding.
I like that idea.
All right. So we're going to take a break. When we get back, guys, we're going to do Who Influences the Influencer? And that is where we ask our guest who influences him and where he gets his information in the industry. Right after these messages.
Today's episode of Search Talk Live is sponsored by...
Hey, Robert, you're here early for the show.
Yeah, I got a ton of SEO work done this morning, and I got it done way ahead of schedule. Couldn't have done it without Ahrefs.
Yeah, so much easier than using multiple programs and having data in a bunch of different places.
Plus, being able to see what is holding a page back from ranking in Ahrefs is so much faster than picking through each part myself.
Oh, yeah, I agree. We use Ahrefs because it's so easy to teach people at our agency how to use it. Their YouTube tutorials couldn't be better. It's one thing to have a tool. It's another thing to know your team is using it to its full capacity. I don't think there's an easier, more complete tool than Ahrefs. Hey, Robert, why don't you hit them up to be a sponsor of the show?
I am way ahead of you.
Ahrefs, the official SEO tool of Search Talk Live. Try their new 7-day trial for only $7. Go to ahrefs.com. That's ahrefs.com.
Your website analytics data probably feels like this. But it could feel like this. Making sense of all the website data available to you hasn't been easy until now. Smile-lytics transforms your website analytics data into easy-to-understand, memorable photographs. You pick your own photo theme. Smile-lytics. S-M-Y-L-E lytics. Like analytics. Only happier. And it's free at smilelytics.com. Want to know how your website is doing? Get the big picture with pictures. It's the easiest and most enjoyable way to understand your website data. No charts, no graphs, no cost. Sign up today. Smilelytics. S-M-Y-L-E lytics. Like analytics. Only happier at smilelytics.com.
Directive is an industry-leading search marketing agency fully focused on helping B2B marketing teams increase their results. If you're looking to increase your marketing qualified leads and decrease your cost per acquisition for search engines, I'd highly recommend you take a look at their site. We've actually had their CEO, Garrett Marguth, on the show, and I can honestly say these guys are doing some great stuff. I hear that they even have their own analytics system that lets you correlate your SEO, PPC, or content efforts directly to revenue. If you're a B2B company and thinking about switching agencies, or if you're in-house and need help, I'd give Directive a look. Visit directiveconsulting.com or call 949-214-4024. Again, that's 949-214-4024. Again, that's Directive at directiveconsulting.com.
Get your questions in on Twitter. Type hashtag SearchTalkLive and your question. Now back to the show.
All right, guys, we're back. If you have a question for Dan while we are on the show, be sure and do hashtag SearchTalkLive on Twitter. We are monitoring that right now. And Dan, it's that time.
Who's influencing you, Dan? Who's influencing the influencers?
It's a good question. So I'm following about 1,000 people on Twitter. So the answer is quite a few people. First of all, I should say, obviously, my teammates at Screaming Frog, definitely, and they're all on Twitter.
That was a good answer.
all the people that I work with, obviously. So we work with each other every day on big projects, and they're a massive influence and inspiration as well. So all of those guys. So you should follow Patrick Landridge, Mark Porter. Have you heard of a strange Lord of the Rings SEO meme account called Lord of the Serps? If you haven't, you should follow that as well. It's one of the team, Oliver Brett. He's very amusing. But I mean, plenty of people in the industry. There's lots of interesting people to follow. I do think Twitter is a very good place to kind of keep up to date on things happening. So I follow people like Aleda, you've probably heard of before.
I have not. Tell us about that person.
You've not heard of Aleda, no? Oh, she's amazing. So a Spanish SEO.
Yeah, she's been on the show way before.
Okay.
When we first started.
All right.
Yeah, so she's an international SEO. She speaks at loads of conferences. She's amazing on Twitter. She shares loads of good stuff. Obviously, super knowledgeable SEO as well. Well worth a follow. Glenn Gabe, you've probably heard of before.
Yeah.
Glenn's a good follow. He's always talking about the latest algorithm updates. I think there was one only a few days ago, actually, on around the 13th, something along those lines. So if you like looking at kind of SEMrush graphs going up and down, he's the man to follow. And he's also got some great insights around and kind of theories behind why websites may see increases or decreases with those updates. Loads of people. Bill Slawski,
Oh, yeah.
He's great for following around, obviously, Google patents and things. Does a load of research that most people like me, are just too lazy to do. Ultimately, does a great job. Dr. Pete from Moz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mike King, iPull Rank. Over here in the UK, there's a few people. OHGM, Oliver Mason. He's very entertaining. Technical SEO, worth a follow. Barry Adams, he's good as well. Another technical SEO. So yeah, lots of people, and also you have to follow some Googlers as well. And I think John Muller, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should do. You can actually ask him some questions, and he will actually answer them amazingly. Obviously, he's not going to tell you the secret sauce to the algorithm, but if you ask him some questions, he actually comes back. I'm slightly amazed by the amount of questions he gets and the amount of answers he gives.
Yeah,
and you got to give props to the people that continue to try to ask him to give them the secret sauce. Day after day after day.
Yeah, literally. I don't know how he does it. He must feel like screaming sometimes. Fair play to him.
He probably gets the same question asked 1,000 times.
1,000 times.
Yeah, easy.
And he gets some real novices, and he's very patient with them. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for him.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
This is a good exercise because, like, for instance, you're in the UK, we're in the US, so you may have insight on people that over here we don't. You know what I'm saying?
I took notes on a couple of those folks. Yeah, it was great.
Sure.
Speaking of Google News, Dan, on July 2nd, Google announced that support for the no index directive is going to be dropped on September 1st. What's your sense of what does that mean for SEOs?
They did what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
On the 2nd, they announced that support for the no index directive is going to be dropped.
Sorry. This is robots.txt no index, isn't it? Yeah. So,
is it an issue? It doesn't seem like it's a really big deal.
I mean, I don't think it's a big issue because I don't think lots of websites, and obviously Google has the data on this, I don't think lots of websites use it. The only thing I would say is that it's pretty handy to use because it did actually work.
Yeah,
it was a little bit unreliable. So when we first tested it, it didn't work, and then it started working about a month later, and we thought that you may need to use it in combination with a disallow, weirdly, and it turned out you didn't. So it was a bit weird, but essentially it just took a long time to come kind of into action, and longer seemingly than a no index meta tag. The only thing I would say, it's a bit of a shame. There's lots of kind of large websites out there with huge development queues. You find it really, really difficult to implement, meta no index or no index via the robots tag in the HTTP header, who found this a quick and easy way to no index pages. But at the same time, you can see Google's perspective. They think people are going to shoot themselves in the foot. And there's lots of people out there who do that. So you can kind of understand why they're withdrawing it.
Oh, is that your sense of it? That the reason they're stopping support is because more people were using it incorrectly than correctly?
I think they're removing it because they've obviously done a proposal for robots.txt, and it's obviously not in there. And I think my belief is their concern is that it's too easy for people to no index pages and hurt themselves. And I really do believe that's the case. I remember hearing arguments for having regex, for allowing robots.txt to have regex, complete regex in there. And my understanding from Matt Cutts many, many years ago was that they liked that idea because it's more advanced. However, for the average user, they would shoot themselves in the foot and they would hurt themselves. So they wouldn't do it.
So can it still be used in the robots text?
No. So come September, in theory anyway, they're always delayed on when they say things. You just shouldn't use no index. Yeah, you won't be able to use it.
In the robot text file.
This is specifically in the robots.txt file.
Okay, I got you.
You can so if you want to no index things, you don't want stuff in the index. Obviously, the pages still need to be crawled to be indexed. Then crawl to be seen. You have to put in a meta robots no index
so there's nothing wrong with
or
that.
X robots tag. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can still have stuff no indexed.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting in one of the articles that I read that people were, one of the things that Google was doing is taking a huge amount of variance in how people implemented that tag in the robot text file. Misspellings, using it incorrectly.
Or blocking their whole site.
Right. Yeah. So, they were erring on the side of being generous because they were assuming that you, the webmaster, had sections of your website that you didn't want Google to get to, and they were going to err on the side of caution and not indexing those.
Yeah.
And so they were taking a huge liberty in how they interpreted some of the misspellings and the incorrect ways that was being executed.
Yeah, you'd see people blocking like plugins so that then the CSS couldn't get indexed, and it's crazy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do from a Google's perspective. That is the right thing to do for them. I'm not sure it's necessarily the answer that technical SEOs wanted, but hey ho.
Did I see, Dan, online that Screaming Frog is doing training yourself? That you offer training?
Yeah, so we do training courses. So we're doing one at Brighton SEO in September as well, and it's specifically around how to use the SEO Spider. So we do a kind of one-day training workshop where you can come along. It's not online, so you have to be in the room, I'm afraid. But we show you how to use the tool, the basics right up to more advanced stuff around, crawling JavaScript websites or crawling kind of big e-commerce websites with complicated faceted navigations, custom extraction, whatever it might be.
Is training a part of Screaming Frog's future, and do you see that content someday being offered online to a larger audience?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to have to. I think so. We launched the training workshops, which we've had a couple so far. So we've only done 2, and they've both been in London. They both sold out, were really great, and people loved it. But the feedback that we got, just because we have such an international user base, is that people would love to be able to do it. And obviously they're based all over the world. And can we do an online version? So I think we're going to have to, and we'd like to be able to as well. And one of the things that we want to do better this year is produce more guides and better content to help, teach people how to use the Spider and things like that. I don't think we do the best job of that. Like I said at the start, we don't. It wasn't built for kind of beginners. It was more aimed at kind of the professional SEO. However, our user base is really diverse. We have people with really different skill sets, and I think we can do a better job there, both in training and on the website in terms of guides and things.
Well, Dan, I mean, you still get a lot of experts that you could probably open their eyes to a lot of features and set feature sets in the software that they wouldn't figure out on their own. So I mean,
100%. Yeah, I think that's true.
What would one of those be, Dan? As you reflect back on your trainings, and you look at them and you go, you know what? Here's the one thing that people apparently are not getting out of the tool that we want them to get, the feature that they're not using. Is there something that stands out in your mind that you would want to tell all Screaming Frog users? You guys, you can do this, but you're not doing this.
SEO Spider.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think like even debugging and self-diagnosis on issues, you can generally find out the issues yourself. I think a lot of people get confused straight away. If you crawl a URL or a website and it stops there, they don't know what to do. And generally it's not a crawler issue. Actually, it's an SEO issue that you can look into yourself. There is a reason why the crawler has stopped. So it might be because it's blocked by robots.txt, or it might be because it's got a no follow meta tag on there. So it's saying don't crawl any of the outlinks. So one of the things that we teach in our training is how you can debug that. So you can look at obviously the response code, you can look at the status and the status code, and you can kind of get clues from that. We also have an indexability status column, and we teach people how to get clues and how to understand whether it's it is blocked by something, or perhaps it's JavaScript or whatever it might be. Yeah.
I think you should put in the free version that, maybe a pop-up or something that says we're an agency.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Another one actually is kind of a kind of fairly basic SEO issue that a lot of people struggle with is understanding why pages or sections might be missing from a crawl. And the number one reason is just because it's not linked to. You're not linking to it. So how can we crawl it? How does a crawler work? A crawler works by obviously following links and crawling those links and discovering more pages and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's another one. I mean, it's not always that. It might be the understanding why Google can find it and we can't. And it might be because obviously Google crawls over a period of time, or because they've uploaded their XML sitemap to Google, or because Google's rendering the content and seeing the links that are in dynamically within the content, or whatever it might be.
How does crawl budget affect what Google might see versus what Screaming Frog might see?
Well, I think there's a difference between the two. I think we're, in terms of crawl budget, there's some similarities in that in the SEO Spider, if you perform a crawl on a website that has kind of lots of unnecessary pages, or lots of pages where that are quite complicated, like a faceted nav or something along those lines, lots of parameters, lots of filters that it's crawling, you'll see it in the SEO Spider. You'll see that it's crawling all of those, and it's wasting a lot of time, and it's crawling lots of URLs. And I mean, Google will work in the same way. I do think Google do it better than we do, obviously. I think obviously because of the way that PageRank works and their understanding of the pages and the way that they deal with duplicate pages and things like that, they're stopped crawling at a certain point, where ours is a little bit more like we're just continue crawling, unless the user themselves has a look at the data and says, hey, we're going to put some excludes in, or we're going to put in a custom robots.txt, or, we're going to, exclude these parameters or whatever it might be. So there's kind of some similarities, but some differences.
It's good information.
Yeah, very good. All right, is it time for Believe It or Leave It?
I think so.
All right, it's time for Believe It or Leave It, Dan, one of the favorite features on Search Talk Live. And in Believe It or Leave It, we give you 3 statements we found on the internet, so you know they're true. And we're going to ask you to tell our audience whether they should believe it or whether they should leave it, and why. You ready for it?
Okay, yeah.
All right, here comes number 1. It has no effect on rank if you exceed Google's recommended lengths for page titles and descriptions. Believe it or leave it?
Leave it. I mean, Google don't have a recommended length themselves. They don't give it. So they don't have it. So when you say recommended length, I mean, obviously they calculate it based upon pixel width of the characters. And you'll find that if you include characters, words beyond the cutoff point that you see within the Google SERP snippets, Google, for page titles anyway, not for meta descriptions because they're not used in scoring, but for page titles they will still use those words in scoring. So it doesn't work that way.
Nice, that's a pretty clear answer.
Yeah, very good. Number 2. If you successfully solicit a link from a relevant, valuable website, you should immediately turn your attention to getting more links from that website.
I mean, it depends what perspective you're looking from. I mean, are we looking purely from an SEO perspective? If so,
yes.
Okay, so purely from an SEO perspective, there's probably less benefit getting multiple links from the same domain.
Right.
There will be some benefit. Don't get me wrong, but there'd probably be less benefit than getting from lots of different linking root domains, just by the way that Google scores links in their algorithm, essentially. But from a user perspective, for example, if we got lots and lots of mentions on, Moz or on, a big SEO blog or whatever it might be, with a really relevant audience, obviously it's great from a user perspective. Referral traffic and potential business and stuff is great.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I'm like, not for an SEO standpoint, but if it's a page that gets a lot of traffic and can bring more traffic to your site, yeah, it's worth it. But from an SEO standpoint, Google has said in the past that, they really only count one link from domain.
Yeah,
domain.
It really depends on what your priorities are, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. All right, number 3. There is no need to individually disavow bad links to your website because Google's algorithm detects spammy link sources and automatically ignores them. Believe it or leave it.
Such a tough one.
Put your faith in Google.
Do you know what? I generally think believe it, and I know there'll be a few people out there who disagree with me, but from what we've seen, generally Google are very good at ignoring bad links, and we worked with a lot of clients who had historical link-based issues who came to us to help them, who saw big recoveries in the Penguin algorithm, which I think is that 2 years ago now, something like that, Penguin 4.
Yeah, right.
When obviously they stopped demoting websites and just ignored the bad links, they saw big increases, and generally I think that's the case. I do think though that there are probably some link-based filters around anchor text and stuff like that are different to Penguin, but I think generally the case is, we haven't done a disavow for quite a long time now, for probably a good couple of years. Maybe only one in a very extreme case when there's a partial manual action or something along those lines. But you rarely see them these days either, because Google is trying to deal with them, obviously, algorithmically.
And I have a theory on this. You remember back in the day when Google Images used to go through and you'd name the images? It was actually helping their algorithm understand what that picture was. Boy, have we come a long way. But I think that was the same thing for the disavow tool. It was getting a sample size of what everybody thought was a spammy website so that they could train their algorithms to understand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but would you consider that the answer to this question is industry specific? Would you consider that some people theorize that, yes, there are certain industries, the self-help industry,
sure,
anything involving money, etc., that they totally have figured out what a spammy link looks like?
Correct, yeah.
But there are other industries where they have not figured out what a spammy link looks like, and that there may be value in individually disavowing it depending on your industry. What's your response to that theory?
I think at this point they've got it down pretty good.
Yeah, so it's really a matter of priorities. The answer to this question is you're an SEO. You've got 20 things on your to-do list. One of them is to disavow links individually. That probably goes to the bottom of your to-do list. There may be some validity to it, but it's got to go to the bottom of your priority list. So it's about prioritizing.
Absolutely.
I think the only reason that someone should be disavowing links is if they have a problem, if they know they have a problem. So if they have a manual action, do a disavow. Yeah, of course, that's the only way to get rid of the manual action. If it's due to link-based issues, obviously, which it will say in the manual action. If it's algorithmic and they're seeing a drop algorithmically and they think it might be a link-based filter, that's where it gets more complicated. But I really do think that's kind of rare these days, and I think there's probably a higher likelihood that Google are just ignoring more of their links than they realize, than the links are actually hurting them. So 99.9% of the time, I really think it's that high. I just don't think there's any value in doing a disavow. I really don't.
Yeah, and it's pretty time intensive too.
Yeah, totally. It's if that's what you're spending your time doing, and actually you're ranking fairly well, and I think you can spend your time more wisely. Definitely.
Great.
We've got one last thing to squeeze in before the end of the show, Dan, and this is your Search Talk Live tattoo. And what we need you to ask our listeners or tell our listeners is what's your most powerful, most succinct piece of advice you can give them. And remember, it's got to be tattooable because Robert gets all this ink.
Oh, crikey. Okay. Let's say keep testing. Keep experimenting yourself, I think is one of the things that I always recommend our team do. Don't just believe what other people say, test things yourself, and kind of, learn and get experience by doing, because, there's lots of people with lots of opinions in SEO, but I always recommend, running your own experiments and working out yourself what does and doesn't work. I think that would probably be some of my best advice, particularly for those new to the industry.
That is great. Keep testing as a tattoo. We could do an entire show on that. Right? Seriously, running down what are SEO tests. Because you and I know PPC. If someone asked you to talk about PPC tests, you could talk for 4 hours. If someone said, what are some regimented, methodical tests you could do in SEO, I'm not sure everybody's as conversant in that, in the way that they are with PPC.
Hard. What'd you say, Dan?
I was just saying, it's hard. That's why, obviously, because it's not in a vacuum. It can be really difficult. But I think there's some pretty solid on-site SEO tests that you can do, even around what we just discussed about page titles. How many words will Google count? Within a page title, how far can you go? You can have a play with a page title and keep going and make up some words that, if you run a search in Google, it doesn't appear, and make up a word and keep going and do it at 200 characters, get the page indexed. Does Google return that page when you run a search for it? Simple SEO test. That's kind of the basics. I think a lot of people don't do that, and more people should anyway.
Yeah, methodical SEO testing, right?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, Dan, it's been a great show. Lots of great information, and I hope that everyone will go check out that doesn't have it already downloaded or have used it, used the SEO Spider tool from Screaming Frog. And Dan, if someone wants to reach you, they can reach you on Twitter at Screaming Frog, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my handle is just at Screaming Frog. Fire any questions my way. I'm generally around and will always answer them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's great. It's been a great up.
And we're going to let you get to bed because it's approaching 9 o'clock your time. And thanks so much for staying up late and doing the show with us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
All right, guys, that's another show. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. And be sure, if you have what it takes to be a guest on our show, we would like you to email us. Email me, Robert, or Matt at searchtalklive.com. It's pretty easy. If you come on, you have to know your stuff, because I will, not to be mean to you, and I try not to do this, but I will call you out if you do something that is just extreme and not good SEO.
You might make the Search Talk Live outtakes very popular.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. But guys, we'll see you next week, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. If you have questions for Search Talk Live, or you're interested in being a guest or a sponsor of the show, email Robert at searchtalklive.com. That's searchtalklive.com.